fuel subsidies by President Bola Tinubu has continued to generate reactions across the land, especially with the latest hike in the pump price of premium motor spirit, popularly known as petrol. While some Nigerians believe that it is necessary to remove the subsidy in order to reduce government spending and to improve the economy, others believe that the removal of the subsidy will have a negative impact on the poor and vulnerable. The government has said that it will provide some relief to the poor and vulnerable through a number of measures, such as cash transfers and tax breaks. However, it is unclear how effective these measures will be. Just on Wednesday, President Tinubu met with selected members of his party, the All Progressives Congress in Abuja, to discuss further modalities to be adopted in the alleviation of these hardships brought about by the removal of the subsidy on fuel. Well, joining us right now to have a conversation around the fuel subsidy removal, its impact, and the economy, and of course its people, we have a lawyer and political activist, Dele Farotumi. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Thanks for joining us on Newsday.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure being with you.
Unfortunately, these times are not the rosiest. Desperation is at an all-time high. The NLC, the Labor Congress, they have threatened, well, of course they have called the palliatives proposed by the government as callous. They are quite skeptical about how the rollout will be, saying it is not transparent, and they are now saying that they think that they might pull out of talks with the government. In your opinion, is it a good idea for them to pull out of these talks, or should they stay the course and try and get some kind of negotiations, as things are quite dire and this is just the situation we're in?
Well, we always try to normalize our obviously abominable situation we skirt around the issues. Because when you speak to the subject of subsidy, the way it's been framed, I believe every major candidate in the last election did say they were going to remove subsidy. But the question that nobody appears to be dealing with right now is exactly what is this subsidy? Who is subsidizing who? If the NLC is talking about withdrawing from negotiations with the government, the question is exactly who were the NLC representing at these negotiations? Were they speaking for me? Was Kabiru, the shoemaker, amongst the people the NLC was speaking for? Iyachukudi, that was selling to that abominable creature, was she also represented by the NLC? Does the NLC have a track record of speaking for the disenfranchised in Nigeria, the disinherited, and the victims of Nigeria? The NLC is a trade union. It deals with the rights of its members. It represents less than a percentile of the Nigerian people. The Nigerian people themselves exercise their franchise. Let's not speak to the legitimacy or otherwise of the person who has presumed to do what was done in one fell swoop on the 29th of May. A friend was using the analogy of a surgery for me today. And he said, oh, it could be likened to a situation where the surgeon ignored to administer anesthesia before commencing the surgery. And I said, no, this is worse. This is a situation where the only thing remaining in Nigeria that the government of Nigeria still gives to the people by default, not necessarily because it wishes them well. But because after it had destroyed our local capacity for refinery, it then began an opaque system that it has never accounted to anyone for. It has destroyed that system. By its own admission, you hear the Nigerian government telling us the bulk of what they are subsidizing are also taken out of the country and smuggled. Is it Iyachukudi and Dauda that were at the border? Are they the custom? What's the so the failure of government at all levels, the impunity of the stealings that attended the subsidy program, nobody is talking about that, but in a very callous and inhuman manner, those who purport to rule over Nigerians were seized by the courage to throw many more people into what is already a bad situation. Whether the man is meeting with his APC people, whoever he cares to meet with, all of us go to the same market. Whether the person voted APC, PDP, PPP, LP, it does not matter now. All of us are in this boat together. But I'm sorry I've taken so long, but there is a lot to unpack because there are presumptions there. The NLC, as far as I'm concerned, is not in a position to speak for us. It might speak for its workers. And it is fine that the workers should be spoken for. But the average Nigerian has had his voice silenced here. And there is no track record of this government or the one before it having the interest of the people at heart. Palliatives for COVID became party items. That is before you even begin to deal with the mindset that would think it was okay to allocate 70 billion to less than 500 human beings. And then you allocate 48,000 naira over 6 months at 80,000 naira monthly to 12 million household, not persons, household, using a system that is completely opaque, not even open to any scrutiny of any sort, the same way they were feeding children at home during COVID. This is the same system that they are now saying they want to use to share the pittance. So please, there is more to this. I'm not going to have a conversation that talks about palliatives because in reality, they've shared that money already. That's why they can easily seg into, okay, we'll turn it into fertilizer and hose. It's no longer about 8,000 now, it's about fertilizer. Because they've spent the money already. So this is not a conversation about NLC representing us. No. It's about, are we even human? Are they even treating us as human beings? How are people supposed to survive this? You moved it to 500 before they are even done breathing. You say, let the poor breathe. Before they could even exhale. It's gone up again. And I have it on good authority from persons in the industry that at the rate they are going, is going to go up even more. When are the poor now going to breathe? How? You're choking them, asphyxiating them, and you're talking about them breathing. How? Those who have stolen us into this situation, how are they going to pay? Who is holding them accountable? All we are talking about is remove the thing and then palliative. What about accountability? Who is talking about that? Somebody took, I think, 90 billion, the Accountant General of the Federation. What has happened? He's walking away free. Akpabio, who is sat at the Senate as the Senate President, he was facing multiple charges for stealing. That is exactly how brazen we have become. No accountability of any sort, but we want to talk about palliatives and removal of subsidy. What about paying for the crime that has led us into this mess? Who is asking those questions? The point is this: if we are indeed a democracy, we'll be finding out in the coming days because somebody has to pay for this. Somebody has to pay for this. It is not about removal of subsidy. Every major candidate in the election agreed that it had become an unsustainable fiasco. But what led into its unsustainability? Why are we not talking about that? Mr. Who are the persons responsible?
Mr. Farotumi, thank you so much. You've given us, quite a very detailed and heartbreaking explanation, on what's happening in the country at the moment. But I think there's one question that is bugging my mind. It actually sounds very easy, but at the same time, it's a little bit absurd. You talked about justifying the abominable in Nigeria. So I'd like to have your own take on the NNPCL having, should I say, the boldness or the courage, to raise fuel price again just in a matter of weeks. They explained that it's in line with market realities and it's been done to save businesses. But I don't know, help me make sense of it. Does it make sense to you?
Nothing in our country actually makes sense anymore, if we are going to tell ourselves the truth. Reality is that what we do these days is that we just coast along and we just allow ourselves to survive. We have lived for so long next to what is essentially a rubbish heap that we've lost our capacity to smell. So we sit down in the midst of our mess and we eat, we drink, we party, and we forget. But the thing is this: the government of Nigeria does not treat the people of Nigeria as human beings. It's not just about treating us as citizens. We are not treated as human beings. Let's imagine this. What kind of mentality, what idea governs a system or a country where the government believes that it is okay to budget 70 billion for less than 500 people and then give what is essentially nothing, crumbs, to so many? So when you now talk about NNPC, who is telling us that the petroleum industry has been deregulated, is still busy being the one fixing prices. When you ask them, what constitutes this price component, NNPC can't tell me and you. The same NNPC that was given an institutional monopoly has today handed that monopoly to a company in which it had invested $2 billion on my behalf and on your behalf. And now that company is now going to be the operator of the monopoly that once belonged to the NNPC. And we are not meant to ask questions. We can't speak to demand, how did we arrive at this price? The same NNPC that told all of us in broad daylight that it is doing direct sale and direct purchase, which meant it was giving crude and it was taking product. Up till today, we don't know exactly where and how the subsidy has arisen. Who was being paid? Nobody is telling who. So the point is this: we've gotten to the point where they just say things because they know there will be no consequences. If people believe that there will be consequences for their actions, if they believe they will be held to account and they will be asked to answer questions in relation to the things that issue forth from their mouths, I am certain that you will have less of this abomination strolling around in broad daylight in our country. We were buying toxic fuel in this country, fuel that will not be sold in any country or other country in the world. We're buying it in Nigeria. Nobody ever paid for that criminality. Nobody. Till today, nobody paid. They told us you are doing direct sale, direct purchase. Up till today, nobody is asking questions. And yet you are demanding. And don't worry, before the end of this month or next month, they will tell us to pay some more. It's one blow after the other for the Nigerian. We've become like orphans, tossed around and beaten about by everybody in our space. The government has become the enemy of the people. And we, the people, we have to look beyond all these stupid, petty differences and begin to ask questions, because these are existential issues. They are legislating us into slavery. And we are all alive and well, and we are sat here and we are busy quibbling over nonsense, ethnicity, religion, and we are being systematically enslaved. All of us. Questions that we should ask, we are not asking. The one that should not concern us is what excites us.
It's unfortunate, and these issues that we're currently going through with a nation that already had everything together, like had dotted its I's and crossed its T's, this would bring it to its knees. And seeing as we were already hobbling How do I ask this question? It's a bit of a runaway horse situation that we have now. The APC spokesperson, Bayo Onanuga, he recently came out and has asked the people to be patient. I'm guessing in the most layman of layman's terms, the idea is things are going to get much worse before they get better. So that this period of time is somewhere where we tighten our belts and we gnash our teeth. And then eventually it will get better. At what point in time it will get better is the question. How that is going to happen, seeing as how planning is not our strongest forte within our government. How is it possible to turn things around? I know you're not an economist, but is it even possible to get things to even just an even layer? What would the government need to do? What would the APC need to do? What kind of statements do they need to come out with in order to pacify the Nigerians that are struggling right now? Because honestly, telling everyone to be patient is just going to create more impatience. Your thoughts on that?
You see, Mr. Bayo Onanuga is paid to say what he has said. And he can't be expected to say anything different from what he has said. He is paid to tell us what the government believes we should be hearing. But it is incumbent on every human being, every sentient being who has the capacity to think on their own, to examine the foundation from which the person has proceeded. There is nothing about Nigeria that inspires hope. Nothing. Every time we have sought to move beyond where we are, the system has managed to truncate hope. And what you have today is a situation where the idea that governs Nigeria, the idea is about idea. You said the Nigerian government, we are not good with planning. They are actually very, very good with planning. It's just that the plans are necessarily evil and not necessarily exertions in relation or on behalf of the people. When it comes to stealing, they plan well. When it comes to grabbing power, they are very meticulous about planning into the future. But the interest of the people ranks nowhere in their mind. Think about it. The only thing remaining that the Nigerian benefits, and I'm not suggesting that it should have been preserved, it would eventually have had to go. But the most basic of the things that should have been done was to have made sure that at the pressure points, government would have provided palliatives to deal with the pressure points. But you are dealing with a situation where the same government that has failed at providing palliatives, at making sure that the subsidy the people themselves are given to government are eliminated by government becoming efficient, plugging his own loopholes, stopping the waste. The thinking that would think it was okay to allocate 70 billion to legislators, 35 billion to judges, that thinking that would also believe that it's okay to now leave the people to the vagaries and then be talking about palliatives after the fact and then proceed to increase the price a second time. That tells you that these are not people who care anything about the people. They don't care. So all those things that Bayo Onanuga is saying is just another round of lies that the APC is not exclusive to the APC, if I may say so, but Nigerian politicians generally, but particularly the APC, since the reign of impunity has been established in this country in 2015, they don't care. All those things he was saying does not connect with the reality on the ground. They want us to keep forbearing. It will get better tomorrow. It has never gotten better on account of the government's action. It's taking the people at every point to provide succor for themselves and to find some relief. The government has only ever occasioned pain in the lives of Nigerians, and nobody has inflicted more pain on us than these Jeroboams who are currently in government. You come in, first thing first, people who are already under pressure, you remove subsidy, quote and unquote, but nobody has any problem with dealing with the many monsters who have stolen us blind. Somebody,
Mr. Farotumi.
look, The pain of the Nigerian is systemic and is deliberate. So Bayo Onanuga can say anything he likes. It does not change our reality. They don't care about us.
Mr. Farotumi, you have, highlighted all the problems, all the issues, Nigeria is currently facing at the moment. But I'd like us to talk about solutions. Is it possible that the judiciary can indeed be the last hope of the common man? In developed countries, we usually hear of civil society organizations, rights groups, suing the government, taking them to court to reverse unfavorable decisions and policies taken by the government. Can that work here in Nigeria? How can we make it work?
Temitope, see, our people, let me play the ethno-religious card now, the Yorubas. They say that Amokun, Erwewo, Olorile Enwo, Ewosale. You say to the cripple that the load on top of his head is lopsided. And he says back to you, you are focused on the load, you are not looking at my legs. The problem with Nigeria is that foundationally, the government is not interested in doing anything good for the people. Foundationally, the system is not designed to obey the law, is not submitted to law. Foundationally, the Nigerian is not a citizen. So when you have these abnormalities churned together in a mix, you have what we have in Nigeria. But you asked a question that is very pertinent, and it is the one that relates to the judiciary and whether we can expect the judiciary to be the last hope of the common man. I have said repeatedly, and I have no apologies for saying so, that the Nigerian judiciary as an institution has been compromised almost beyond redemption. But I also know that there are still good men and women within the system. Our particular situation at this time demands that men and women need to remember that beyond the verdict of men, there is a verdict of history, and then there is a verdict that will be handed down by God. Truth is eternal. We were all in this country. We all witnessed what happened. If men would have their consciences purchased and forget the need to uphold justice, that is left for them and for God. But we will tell their stories, and posterity will remember. So I will say without equivocation, there is nothing institutional about the Nigerian judiciary that should lead anyone to be optimistic about it retaining the capacity to dispense justice. However, as I have said, there is always a remnant. Perhaps out of these 5, there will be remnants. But only God knows who and who those remnants be. But I do know one thing. It is up to the judiciary to save Nigeria from itself. Because the spiral of hopelessness is essentially because of the illegitimacy of the man who is running amok.
Well, Mr. Dele Farotumi,
to the sacrifices being demanded of them. That's my personal opinion.
Right.
And I'm entitled to it. I'm not saying that that is the opinion of Arise News. Now, if the people's strength should be aligned behind a vision for change, instead of fighting the person they believe has forced himself on them, they will willfully follow, happily, they will follow the leader that they have elected on their own. So it is critical that there be legitimacy between those who purport to lead and those they are demanding that must follow. If I must follow you, and you are demanding that I should follow you through difficult times, then definitely I must have a say in your election and your enthronement in power. If my right as a citizen has been curtailed, then why should I follow you happily?
Well, let me just interject here for the sake of time. We always say, God forbid, for situations we don't want to happen. We have seen the cost of living crisis affect our brothers and sisters in other African countries. Just recently, we've seen footage of Kenyans protesting due to their own fuel increases. Also in Angola, many other countries are facing this. If the judiciary is our last leg for hope in this country, what about the citizens? We definitely do not want a situation where things get out of hand and violence is spread. But speak to the ways that Nigerians can channel their frustrations, let their frustrations be heard on other medium, other than social media and the likes, in a way that is commensurate to the pain that they are feeling. Is that a possibility?
I believe that there is a good side to the storm that we're about to go through or that we are passing through. And the good side to that is the fact that it is going to become increasingly easier to show the people the commonalities of their affliction. I don't use the word citizen in relation to the Nigerian. You cannot have citizenship in a place that is not governed by the rule of law. So we are not citizens. The realization of this fact will be one of the first steps on the path to our liberation. Because if you are unaware of the exact nature of your existence, you are unlikely to fight to change that existence. But the Nigerian is not a citizen. If we didn't know before, even what they are proposing as palliatives in this season should tell us the truth of our existence. We are not citizens. But that state of being has been exacerbated mainly because the rulers have managed to convince the people that they are enemies. So the Igbo is busy hating on the Yoruba is hating on the Hausa is hating on the Fulani, the Ijaw is hating on the Kalabari. Everybody is busy hating on themselves, but the people sharing 70 billion in the National Assembly are not from one ethnic nationality. They are from all across Nigeria. And none of them has deemed it fit to stand up and come and be shouting on behalf of the people that they purport to represent. That tells you that at the level of the ruiners of Nigeria, they understand their common interest and they have aligned. They've become one. It is the victims themselves, the people who have become so divided that they are unable to recognize the need to unite so that they can then demand to be treated as human beings and then as citizens. Because you first of all have to be treated as human beings before you can be treated as citizens. The same people demanding that we tighten our belt every day, they are going around in convoys. We are the ones who maintain them in style. So I am convinced that there will be a good side to all of this. When everybody has sufficiently recognized the fact that we are all suffering the same, Yachukudi and Bolaji and even Ebitimi, they will stop hating on each other and quarreling all the time. They will realize that their true enemies are the ones who have been pointing their enemies at them. So frankly, our situation is bad, but it also provides a path into the future. We, the victims, are the ones who need to unite. This government, this system, it doesn't have anything good for us. The idea of Nigeria, as far as the governing system is concerned, is for the poor to remain poor, subservient, incapable of questioning the rulers, and the rulers to live above the law like royalties. And the poor can jolly well go to wherever they care to go. That is the reality of our existence in Nigeria today.
Well, Mr. Dele Farotumi, you know, every time you come on the program, you always leave us tongue-tied. But thank you so much for coming on Newsday. Lawyer and political activist Dele Farotumi, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.
Retired lawyer.
Retired lawyer. Thank you
very much for having me.